And Amnesty International has expressed fear of the Speaker of Parliament's calling for an amendment of the country's laws to completely ban homosexuality and make it illegal that could infringe on the fundamental and universal right of such individuals. The executive director of that very group insists despite the sexual orientation of such persons, their fundamental human rights must be respected.
Issues about homosexuality and lesbianism all fall under sexual orientation. So Amnesty's position is this, that people should not be discriminated against simply because of their sexual orientation. So that if someone is gay or someone is a homosexual, that individual still has rights. Because our Constitution recognizes that human dignity is invaluable, and that applies to every individual. So what we will say, and we have been saying, is that people should not be beaten, people should not be killed, people should not be denied access to basic facilities or basic amenities simply because of their sexual orientation. We do not advocate for people to be homosexuals. We do not advocate for people to be gay. We don't go out on the street saying that people must be homosexuals or they must be gay. But what we are saying is that if someone expresses rights.
So do you support the ban as being said by the Speaker?
So as being said by the Speaker of Parliament, the question we must ask is this: does that ban or whatever law that is being proposed towards that ban, does it conform to international human rights standards? Does it conform to our own constitutional provisions? Chapter 5, which talks about fundamental human rights and freedoms. Okay, so it is not about satisfying the sentiments of individuals, but it's about ensuring that we have laws, we have policies, and we have programs that respect the rights of every individual. So I know that this is being discussed within our culture, but the fact also is that without supporting or opposing anybody's sexual orientation, we also recognize culture is dynamic. Now the question is, when culture and human rights collide, what happens? Human rights are fundamental to every individual. Before culture was human rights.
So we're going to delve a lot more into this very topic, but let's go back to our Constitution and find out what exactly the Constitution said. And we're looking at the Criminal Offences Act 1960 Act 229, and Section 104 says unnatural carnal knowledge. Whoever has unnatural carnal knowledge of any person of the age of 16 years or over without his consent shall be guilty of a first-degree felony and shall be liable on conviction of imprisonment for a term of not less than 5 years and not more than 25 years. Again, still on that very law, of any person of 16 years with over his or consent is guilty of a misdemeanor, of any human or animal rather is guilty of a misdemeanor. Now, unnatural carnal knowledge of sexual intercourse with a person in an unnatural manner with an animal. Now, let's go back to this and look at what the UN also says and exactly the concern of Amnesty International. Now, protection against violence and discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. And the Human Rights Council resolution here states, that's for 2007, reaffirms that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights, and that everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights without distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth or other status. And there's more on this very issue. Now we're going on the phone line to speak with Executive Director of Amnesty International, Frank Dui. He's the acting Executive Director of Amnesty International. Good afternoon, sir, and thanks for your time.
Good afternoon, Wendy.
Now, the particular law that sought to have countries like Ghana give protection against violence and discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity was not signed by Ghana and most African countries. Would you say your comment is on us respecting the rights of LGBTs is still in order?
Thank you very much for having me. I think there is some confusion about the discussion or the debate on the right to sexual orientation, and it's important that we place the discussion in a proper context so that people will appreciate Amnesty International's position on the matter. You have read out the law. You have made references to international human rights standards. Ghana has ratified several international human rights standards that place an obligation. The 1992 Constitution also makes provision for the enjoyment of fundamental human rights and freedoms by all citizens. Specifically, Chapter 5 of the Constitution talks about the fact that every person in Ghana, whatever his race, and I would like to say whatever his or her race, place of origin, political opinion, color, religion, creed, or gender, shall be entitled to the fundamental human rights and freedoms of the individual contained in the Constitution. We all know and do agree that the Constitution of Ghana is the basic law of the land. And so if the Constitution has made provision for the enjoyment of the rights of all citizens, it is important for all of us to ensure that those who have the responsibility to implement the provisions do the right thing in conformity with the law. Amnesty International's position on the right to sexual orientation is clear. As an international human rights movement, we do not oppose or support any individual or group of individuals. We do not affiliate or align ourselves to any political, religious, or social opinion or creed. Our main concern is the impartial protection of rights that have been provided in international, regional, and national human rights documents. So if we are making the position that people should be allowed to enjoy their sexual orientation, what we are saying simply is that nothing should be done to deny individuals who have so declared, their preference for other forms of sexual or sexuality or to education, for example. And so our position is that no one should be discriminated against because of his or her sexual orientation. You read out the law, which talks about, consensual sex. What happens if two individual adults consent to having sex in a way that does not appeal to the conscience or the culture of Ghanaians? What do we say to that?
Like you already mentioned, the Constitution, that's the Ghanaian Constitution, which we all go by as Ghanaians, has clearly stipulated what the do's and don'ts are. And definitely, if you go against it, you suffer the consequences. But aside we rectifying some of these laws, doesn't make it binding to go throughout the three processes of implementing, promulgating policies, and setting up institutions. Now, how do you compare our local existing laws with what you're saying regarding the universal laws that you've touched on?
Thank you, Wendy. I'll give you one example. Ghana has ratified the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Okay, and this international law clearly states that no one should be subjected to torture, cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment. Okay, so if we stand on this provision, which places an obligation on Ghana to ensure that Ghanaians are not subjected to torture, they are not subjected to any form of inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment, then we can say that even if we identify individuals to be of a different kind of sexual orientation, which we would say does not conform to our culture or our norm, that does not give any individual or any group of individuals the right, to subject those individuals to torture or any form of inhuman or degrading treatment.
Now, before I let you go, sir, sorry for rudely interrupting you there. Now, if two men are caught in the act, looking at the scenarios you've given here, what should be done to them?
Well, we have the law, we have due process. What the law says
which law are you referring
if individuals are caught in a situation that is at variance with our law, that's the right thing to do, that such individuals should be investigated. They should be presented before a court of competent jurisdiction for their side of the verse or their version to be heard, and for them to be taken through the due process of the law. And until they are found guilty of, the breaking of a particular law, they cannot be punished.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. I have been speaking to the executive director, or that's the acting director, executive director of Amnesty International.